Well, hello there, and welcome to A Film a Day with me, Jordan Woodley. And since I'm continuing this trend of contemporary releases, I seem to have sort of watched several in the last couple of videos, and I thought that perhaps with the success of the Bo Burnham video, it would be smart to go for the newest Netflix release and see how people respond to it. And again, as a horror person, it only made sense to look at this new trilogy of movies, at least the first one, which is the Fear Street trilogy, beginning with Part 1, 1994. And again, it is that thing of, is this a film? Because it's a trilogy of films that work more like serialized drama, and it is still technically a feature-length movie being released to Netflix, and so I'm sort of with a vague sense similar to Bo Burnham. But as I say, this is one in a trilogy of horror-based. It's not quite an anthology because it follows the same characters during the same event, but broadly it's set around this Fear Street. Well, it's the first part is set in this town called Shadyside, and you have Sunnyvale and Shadyside seems to be a place that has regular slasher-based murders, and you therefore have a group of teens who are dealing with the latest slasher-based attack, and then it sort of opens up to more supernatural storytelling. And I don't know if it's because I'm very conflicted about this. As I've mentioned in videos prior, horror is something that's very close to my heart. I wrote my dissertation on horror. I've been watching and down the line studying horror for a long time now. And there is a sense that, on the one hand, I could easily slip into horror snobbery, where, I only like things like Don't Look Now and The Exorcist, and I easily shun new release horrors, anything which is playing much more to the stalls. But then on the other hand, so videos I've done previously, of course, included Happy Death Day, which I love, both parts I love, the Mortuary Collection. So it's just because it's a new horror release and it's a little bit more basic slasher doesn't mean I'm immediately going to turn my nose up to it. I know that horror, there are two channels of horror really, which of course you have your complex art house horror, which is examining the human condition and contemporary issues through the horror lens, and ways we can examine the human psyche through the supernatural or through the science fiction, and just the way that it can tap into the visceral ideas of fear. Now that I am deeply interested in. However, cinema is ultimately a commodity. And on the other hand of that, you have the fact that, yes, some of those horrors are interesting, and yes, some people, they age incredibly and people love them, but that doesn't mean necessarily they will be things that people love when they first come out. And a lot of horror, especially sort of things that are just being sort of rolled out, do fall more into the category of, okay, can we make a fun popcorn film that makes people jump? And yes, on one level, going back to the snobbery, I do have that sense of, it is easy to make someone jump. I could easily make this video and have some jump scare in it, or throw myself at the camera to make some viewer jump. It's not difficult to do. However, if it doesn't mean anything, if it's there just to make you jump, then to me it sort of fails film art form. It's like, well, what's the function of it? What's it trying to tell us about ourselves, or tell us in story terms? And the problem with the Fear Street film, 1994, is the fact that it follows very traditional slasher plot beats. It does play more towards a teenage crowd. And again, just because it plays toward teenagers doesn't mean, by definition, it's bad. You know, there are some incredibly intelligent, well thought out horrors that are long lasting, that were made to a younger popcorn audience. I mean, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, going all the way to Scream. You know, these had teenage protagonists, were playing towards teenage audiences, and they had a more general audience idea sense as well, but, you know, they knew how to play to the stalls, as I said. And then part of me then also wonders, is it my age? Have I reached that point where when new slashers come out and they're about teenagers and it's very much from a teenage perspective, am I just no longer identifying with it? And if I've been trying to sort of think of it in terms of, would a younger version of myself appreciate this more? If I was 15, would I eat this up? And it's hard to say. Because there is another aspect to this, which is, of course, this isn't just a slasher that has just been made. It is part of, or at least adapted from, R.L. Stine's work. Now, I grew up, R.L. Stine was my first horror. I read the books, I watched the 90s TV series, Goosebumps, and my most proto-understanding of horror storytelling comes from Goosebumps. Now, admittedly, I'm probably more of an Are You Afraid of the Dark kid, but I can't not acknowledge the craftsmanship that R.L. Stine did in his storytelling. However, R.L. Stine famously, because he was writing for a kid's audience, is trying to almost introduce you to the basic plot beats of horror. Fear Street, as far as I can understand, which is another series of books separate from Goosebumps, is the same thing but for a teenage or a late teen audience. And the problem is, and I've never read any of the books, I have no idea how closely these film adaptations are to them, but let's assume it is. It does feel a little bit like Goosebumps, but it's going to have sex and language in it. And just having the same format, formula, structures, character arcs that would appear in a Goosebumps, but now you have F-bombs and sex and blood, doesn't give it a maturity just because those things exist. And so the problem I have with this is that sense of, okay, I'm watching this and I'm immediately going, okay, this is fairly basic slasher storytelling. Like I say, there's a supernatural element to it. Is there anything more going on? And there was a moment where I genuinely thought there was an interesting idea to do with public hysteria, and the idea that if there is this place where murders are happening regularly, and the effect it starts to have on the community, where people are turning on each other, especially when you have these two towns, one rich and violent, crime-free, and doesn't have any of these issues, and one poor. Is there a commentary there? But also you have that sense of friction between these two communities, with the overlap being teenagers. And you think, okay, so is this going to be about hysteria and the idea of people turning on each other because they don't understand the source of this? The murderers seem to just pop up at random, and the violence is illogical. And you start to think, okay, that's a cool idea, and again, it's a small down principle, but then it immediately veers away from that. And it's a shame, because I actually was for a moment when that's a really interesting idea. It veers away from it. It has a fairly rich cast of characters where it goes, okay, this is the sheriff, and this is the mayor, these are the rich people, this is the poor. And you think, okay, so you're really trying to build this community up. And then it focuses on 5 characters in a very Breakfast Club style setup. And it tries to be contemporary, it tries to make it more relevant, even though it's set in 94. So you have your geeky characters into the internet, even though the internet is proto-internet. You have 2 drug dealer characters, and you think, okay, they could be more mature and interesting. And then you have a, your lead girl, essentially, and her ex-girlfriend, and of course that brings in the LGBTQIA aspect of it, that you think, okay, well, it's sort of updating our ideas of what I imagine would have been written in the 90s would have been a more heteronormative relationship. They're making it a queer relationship. But that doesn't make it more interesting or give it any more complexity. That's just what it is. And these characters are fine, but they're very standard slasher characters. And as I'm watching this, I'm willing there to be more. But it is... R.L. Stine tells very basic stories. He knows how to hit certain beats, he knows how to introduce certain things, but it doesn't mean that, he knows how to do it on a very superficial level, because again, it is your first horror. And Fear Street, unfortunately, doesn't have any development on that. And the characters are the same characters that would be in a Goosebumps, but now, as I say, now they're being stabbed on screen and swearing and having sex with each other on screen. And there is something a little bit gratuitous about that, and there are moments where you think, is this just that little bit, I don't know, there's something a little bit creepy about the idea of seeing like teenagers having sex. And again, does that feed into the fact that I'm getting older and I don't really want to be seeing that? Whatever the case, I really did struggle with this. I could watch it. It's very simple. It's, I could put it on, but I struggle to engage. And if I'm struggling to engage, it means my mind is going on to other things. I'm not really seeing any thematic depth to it or meaning. I'm looking at certain plot beats and going, okay, they've set up this, that's going to pay off this way. They set up this, they're going to pay off this way. And it just doesn't have any more going on for me. It just lacks any more complexity to it. So when you get to the third act, and of course R.L. Stine style twists and things, you go, oh, that's that, and this is this, and this character was behind it. It has a very basic murder mystery sense of, yes, there is a supernatural element, but the revelation is something you could work out because they essentially set it up in the first act, as you would like a murder mystery. And it's a shame, because I just didn't do it for me. And I do wonder, because it has seemed to have reviewed quite well, whether, like I say, all these thoughts about my expectations of horror, my understanding of horror, the age demographic that it's going for, I'm intrigued to see whether my personal biases are now starting to feed into my analyses. I do wonder. I think I will watch the other two. I might do, and so consequently I will end up doing videos on them, because these are going to be once a week, seemingly, parts 2 and 3. So probably I will do the videos. I'll see how I feel. I might change my mind on that, but this first one definitely left me a little bit bored. And it makes me think, God, I wish I had a Shudder subscription, because with the Mortuary Collection, with other Shudder-related horrors that I've seen advertised, it's definitely the more interesting platform for more compelling horror narratives. But hey, not everything can be a winner. Anyway, thank you for joining me. If you like this video, hit the like button, comment below, and share the video to help me in the algorithm. Subscribe to the channel and hit the little bell to get notifications of when new videos are uploaded. Check out my back catalogue of over 150 videos. And follow me on Twitter at Jordan_Woodley, where I'm always tweeting about TV shows and movies, and I share these videos once they're uploaded to YouTube, either the day of or the day after. Thank you for joining me. Take care.